Welcome back to Chin Music, our baseball show at TalkNorth.com. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios, and we are presented to you by OnX Hunt, ON X Hunt. Tell you more about our newest sponsor later. Thanks also to Minnesota Masonic Charities, True Vision Institute, and reminder at the end of every episode in the off season, maybe during the regular season too, we will do our Booze and Blues segment. We have a couple really good ideas for our shows this week. At least I hope they're good ideas. We'll see. Good thing about Booze and Blues, you really can't screw it up. Anything you talk about in those realms is going to be fun. Let's start today on Chin Music. LaVelle, you wrote about it. You've talked about it. Just take us through not only leaving Pedro Martinez off your ballot way back when, I believe the 25th anniversary of that moment just recently passed, how it affected you, how the reactions you got to it, and whether you have ever had any regrets for doing so.
Sure. Yeah, it was 25 years ago on November 18th. I was backing up the Wolves beat. And I was driving to Target Center, and the radio's on. And they're saying, what is surely will be a controversial decision. Pedro Rodriguez was voted the American League Most Valuable Player. Pedro Martinez finished second. He was left off the ballot by two writers, George King of the Washington Post and LaVelle E. Neal the third of the Star Tribune. I said, what? I said, just two of us? I struggled with that ballot that year because I wanted to put Pedro on the ballot somewhere, but I felt I was devaluing him as a pitcher. And as at the time when we really didn't know how to compare pitchers and hitters from a statistical standpoint and the impact they made. And Pedro ended up having one of the best pitching seasons of all time that year, with a 2 ERA going 23-4. It was ridiculous. But I struggled trying to compare him to like a Pedro Rodriguez, or I think Manny Ramirez, who drove in, I think, 147 runs that year, just had a monster year. So I said, if I'm devaluing him because he's a pitcher, I can't justify him putting him on the ballot anywhere. So I left him off. It's been documented. It seems like people were very upset about that approach to filling out a ballot. George King had no defense. Apparently, he was trying to rig the system so Derek Jeter could get voted MVP. So his was just for selfish reasons. I came up with what I thought was a reasonable conclusion as to why I didn't want to put Pedro on. Now, times have changed totally different times now. We got all the statistical alchemy we can rely on to determine who's the best player, or at least an MVP type player from year-to-year basis. WAR wasn't a big thing then, and Pedro led baseball in WAR that year. I mean, if you pay attention to that way, I mean, it makes a very strong case for him to be included in MVP. Now, pitchers have won before. I think Willie Hernandez was MVP one year when he was with the Tigers. And since then, both Verlander and Kershaw have been most valuable players as pitchers, and Shohei Ohtani, who's done both. So the 1999 version of myself has no regrets about how I filled up the ballot that year. The 2024 version of me would probably look at it differently, given that there's more statistical tools to lean on. The reaction's crazy. Jim, I printed out every email I got in the aftermath of that, and I just happened to open up my box, and I looked at them yesterday. It's like 400 emails of people just furious. A lot of people from Boston, a lot of fans, different types of rhetoric and vitriol, and some mean things. But there were some reactions that were just priceless. I actually called Terry Ryan last week. I told him what I was going to do because I guess people don't realize how much of a sense of humor Terry had, because he had his bilingual secretary call my office phone and leave a message half in Spanish, half in English. And the English part was, I'm from the president's office from the country of the Dominican Republic. How could you not vote for our national hero, Pedro Martinez? And so a half an hour later, Terry calls me and says, I got to admit, LaVelle, I set up my secretary to call you and leave that message. I don't want you to have any lingering issues with this. I said, no problem, Terry. That's actually a high quality joke there. And then when I was covering the Wolves Trailblazers game, like a week later, I'm trying to get back to the media room before the third quarter begins. I hear the Wolves are coming out for the third quarter. The fact that Anthony Peeler and Terrell Brandon actually wanted to talk about the Pedro Martinez vote seconds before starting a third quarter of an NBA game, I just thought was hilarious. So, and then there was a group of guys who would call from a bar. They did right after the vote and told me how much of an idiot I was. And they called back a year after that. This is the anniversary of your stupid vote. And then they called back a second time. This is the second anniversary of your stupid vote. And I didn't hear back from them the third year. So on the anniversary, I called the number back and said, "This is LaVelle E from the Star Tribune. I had not received your annual hatred messages about my Pedro Martinez vote. Please get back with me." And I never heard from him. So,
LaVelle, I thought 2 years was enough, and I do appreciate you calling back.
I like it. So it was a very interesting period. I had colleagues who were upset with me. I think Patrick Royce wasn't happy with me at all. Other people thought I had every reason to vote the way I did. It was an interesting period. I definitely haven't forgotten. And I probably have reopened some old wounds by writing about the 25th anniversary of it.
All right. So great stories, funny stories. Now we're going to flip it to a slightly more serious approach here. Roy, you were a player, and you were a position player. First of all, do you think pitchers should be available for the MVP? And second of all, I don't know. LaVelle and I have completely different approaches here. LaVelle votes on everything he can. I got to a point where I was like, why am I deciding this stuff? What business is it of mine who wins these awards? And I better, I just didn't like being involved in something that momentous that is much more important to the subjects than it is to me. So take us through what you think of all of this in terms of writers voting for players and whether pitchers should be eligible for MVP.
Were you talking to me?
Yeah. I think I wasn't referring to LaVelle as being a former major league player, so I think I was talking to you.
No, I lost you for
okay.
And I'm not sure why. After LaVelle got done with his story, and you started it on the serious nature, I was trying to interrupt you, and you never heard me, and so I go, well, what the hell's going on here? And it looked like I wasn't on, so I tried to figure. I was going to send you a text, and then I missed what you're going to say. Because
to summarize, my bad. To summarize very quickly, should pitchers be eligible for MVP, and should writers vote for these kind of awards?
Okay. Well, here's what I think about LaVelle's story. I completely understand your thinking, LaVelle. Back in those days, it would take something extra special for a pitcher to be the most valuable player, and still in my mind it does, because as great as pitchers can be and as important as they can be, it's a once every 5-day deal, and so it's for Manny Ramirez, to use your example, to be driving be out there every day and driving 147 runs. I mean, I think that weighs more than most guys. Now, having said that, I'm okay with a pitcher winning the most valuable player in an extraordinary year. Sandy Koufax, 25-4 or whatever he was, and I think now even without the WAR number, I think I would soften to the idea that my 25-year-ago self will now kind of agree with my 24-year-old self that what Pedro did that year was truly sensational. But I think it gets at the heart of the issue. Are you talking about the most valuable player of the team, or are you talking about stats that make you player of the year? I mean, the eye-popping stats that you just have to say this guy's performance, was just otherworldly. So I think those will always be the issues in how you're voting for an MVP, since they don't have a player of the year and a most valuable player. So now what do I think about writers voting? It's a legacy. It's historic. I mean, it's just the way it's always been done. I don't have a real hard time with it. If someone came up and with a better idea, so if you say, okay, only the players and managers and coaches can vote. If it's fans, it's a popularity contest. If it's players, they don't see guys day in, day out as much as writers are apt to do. So I don't know. I'm of two minds there. I don't think there's a perfect way to do it.
I agree with you. I'm gonna get more into that and kind of run it by LaVelle too as we go forward here. First, let's take care of the business of the business. Want to let you know we are coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios and want to tell you more about OnX Hunt. Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today. Also want to let you know about a great Minnesota company. I just keep hearing great things about them from so many different people in different walks of life. Minnesota Masonic Charities.
When people think of the Freemasons, they often think of secret handshakes and unusual hats, and of course, the pancake breakfast. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work that they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota or the Masonic Children's Hospital and the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They are just a few examples of the important work that the Freemasons support here in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. We look forward to learning so much more about their many programs here in the weeks to come.
Yes, we are sponsored by Aquarius Home Services. We want you to know more about Aquarius Home Services.
Yes, fall is in full swing, and Old Man Winter will be visiting soon. Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Now is the time to make sure your furnace is ready for the winter ahead. And to help you prepare, Aquarius is offering a furnace peak performance check for just $29. Don't let Old Man Winter catch you by surprise. Schedule your furnace peak performance check today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended.
Last but not least, we want you to hear from John Krasinski on how True Vision Institute changed his life.
Yeah, True Vision in Bloomington. I was talking to someone at the Timberwolves game against the Hornets, and they were asking me about it. And they had also had LASIK surgery as well. And it was, the term that we both have used, and I've used it on the show, is life changing. It really is. And you're going to roll your eyes at it. Maybe if you're wearing contacts and eyeglasses, you're going to say, yeah, right. I did the same thing. I was skeptical of it. I was like, it can't be that good. But I went to True Vision. I visited with the nicest, most friendly staff there that put me through the paces, got me to the right answer and the right option for my vision correction, and then got me to Dr. Chu, who did an unbelievable job with the surgery itself. It does make your life so much easier, not having to go in every year, every 2 years for new glasses and new contacts, spending hundreds of dollars, getting the eye exam, trying to find what's the fashionable frames nowadays. All of those things. It's a headache. And I do not have that anymore because I got LASIK at True Vision. It took me not even half of a day to recover from the surgery. And by the time I woke up the next morning, I was seeing clearly and crisply, and everything was great. So go into True Vision or go to truevision.com to set up your consultation and tell them the John Krasinski Show sent you.
And a reminder, we will get to booze and blues here in a second. All right, LaVelle. So when I was a young baseball writer, I thought it was a great honor to vote on all these awards. As the years went by, I thought, okay, maybe it helps with the prestige of the Baseball Writers Association if we vote on these awards. I eventually got to a point where I was like, okay, what we're really doing here with the Hall of Fame and with all the Baseball Writer Awards voting is we're basically just taking the heat for people who want to give out these awards and don't want to take heat themselves. The Hall of Fame could have the best committee in the world decide who goes to the Hall of Fame. Instead, they let writers do it. Instead, the writers take all the heat and the Hall of Fame gets all of the glory. I also got to a point where I wasn't comfortable voting on anything that was that. Like, I remember, it was convenient for me that I actually thought Burt Blyleven was a Hall of Famer. But let's say I was seeing Burt Blyleven every day and I'm voting for him not to go in the Hall of Fame. and I don't know. I because I saw how important it was to Bert on a daily basis, how tortured he was. I just don't know if writers should be put in that position. So those are all my objections. Why do you think writers should be voting, LaVelle?
Well, I just think baseball is unique because it's a 162 game schedule, and you're. I'm not saying you cover every game, but you're there at least 100 times a year. You're there for spring training. I just think you're immersed in the sport to the extent where you should be considered an expert on it and should be able to be part of the process to select who's been the most effective, or been the or just to determine which players have been excellent and deserve honors. I don't know if there's a better system out there. Everybody has a voting system. Baseball is the most transparent, and I think that's why there's the most blowback, because you can put your ballot online. The BBWA website is a place where, if writers want to, they can have their ballots published. My voting record is there for all to see on the BBWA website. That doesn't bother me. I think some people would like some anonymity, and they do. But I just think anyone who covers baseball, or any professional sport for that matter, you're immersed in it. You know a lot of the officials. Can you be biased? Yeah, absolutely. But when you have like several hundred people voting for something, you're going to have a couple weird ballots and some strange outcomes. But I've always thought it was an honor and a privilege to be able to vote on postseason awards, and I continue to do so. I'm actually flying to Cooperstown in February. I've been asked to be on the next Hall of Fame committee that determines who's on the veterans ballot. So I've been on the committee who voted Fred McGriffin, for the veterans committee that voted Fred McGriffin, and that was a great honor as well. I mean, there's some high-powered people in the room: Paul Beeston, Artie Moreno, Theo Epstein, Greg Maddox, Frank Thomas, Jack Morris, Dave St. Peter, Susan Ing, Susan Slusser, and we all sat there and had a really spirited discussion about determining who should be voted in. So I don't think I take these appointments lightly, and I try to approach it as fair and as level-headed as I can.
I just had, one thing to that. You would think that players are, immersed in the game as well, right? I mean, they're out there actually playing every day and seeing things in players that amplify how great they are. Even even more so, I think, than what writers can see oftentimes. But the thing that always made me laugh when I thought about, only players should vote for this stuff because they know about it better than anybody else. Well, they don't really, because I remember conversations we'd have. We sit around the clubhouse and and whether it was for MVP, just thoughts. I mean, or whether it was at the end of the year, but postseason awards, Gold Glove, or Silver Slugger, or just they would do these surveys of players, and we'd have to and you have guys sitting around going, well, wait a minute, I don't know his stats. Let me take a look at the players didn't know either. I mean, the players have an idea about certain players that they have seen tear it up, and by reputation they've seen them over the years. But if some guys, there'd be some guys like for the All-Star game, you'd say, well, wait a minute, who is this guy? I didn't know he was putting up those kind of numbers. It's that kind of thing. So there's no perfect way.
Well, hey, I got point one thing too. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, and no 2 or 3 people think alike either. So I just think we have to respect the process. But I got to point out the one year that Rafael Palmeiro was voted a Gold Glove, and he only played 23 games at first base that year. And that is an award that's voted on by managers and coaches. So they just tried to come up with the first base, but they knew Rafi put up numbers, and he also gets Gold Glove as well. Doug Mientkiewicz has not forgotten that. he to this day he swears he should have been the Gold Glove winner that year. But it kind of shows you. You're right, Roy. I've been in clubhouses when players are filling out awards ballots and go, who's the best second baseman in the league? Because they while they're immersed in the game, they're not following other teams all the time. So you do have some hiccups like that every now and then.
Yeah, I think the baseball writers generally do a good job, and one thing that drives me crazy is a Hall of Fame ballot. The Hall of Fame balloting will come out, let's say, and there'll be like one or two people who will leave an obvious Hall of Famer off the ballot, and people will scream about it. But the whole point of having all of those people voting is that the dumb votes end up not mattering. The dumb votes are just fringe votes that aren't going to impact the actual outcome of the overall voting. The other thing I'll say
Correct.
is that I used to have to go into clubhouses and locker rooms with the Vikings and get voting for different awards, like whether it was for Sporting News or Sports Illustrated or whatever. And I can't tell you how many times I had a player basically either admit to me tacitly or admit to me accidentally that they had no idea. They just picked a name out of midair.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've seen that
happens. It happens all the time, and I'm sure that Rafael Primero is a great example. Managers, coaches probably. I mean, they knew he was a great, Gold Glove caliber guy, and they just didn't think about him playing 23 games. Just thought, well, who's better than Palmeiro? Let's just again just put him down because they didn't. They got other things to do. They just don't want to think about it though.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to do another show later this week to set up Thanksgiving week. We'll get more into some baseball topics. For today, our Booze and Blues segment, we want to highlight Roy, and sometimes we just talk music. But today, Roy actually has a tequila recommendation, and I want to see if LaVelle can think of anything as good as Roy's tequila recommendation.
Well, yeah, I will. I will just say that this is not a new tequila. It's not a new tequila to me necessarily. I've been aware of it. I've just never had any in my home. And not long ago, my son, knowing how much I like tequila, bought me a bottle of Adictivo. And it smelled like addict with the IVO on the end. It's got a beautiful crystal-looking bottle, and it's just, I had not opened it. My sons-in-law and my son were over one night a week or two ago, and my sons-in-law, I think we may have been, I think it was the night we had been at a Mexican food restaurant with the whole, extended Smalley gang family. And so we came back, my sons-in-law said, hey, I asked them what they'd like, and they said, well, tequila. We just been at a Mexican restaurant. So I opened this bottle that my son had given me because I had never done that. And I got to tell you, I mean, I was actually shocked. I didn't realize that my son would. I should have known better, but I didn't realize that he would have that kind of taste in tequila. Or he does, but he didn't want to spend the money on. I was surprised he spent the money on his old man. So that was pretty cool night. And I'm just gonna say, if you're looking for a really great tequila, Adictivo, just like addict with IVO on the end. It's wonderful stuff.
So I have a tequila story. My wife and I were vacationing somewhere in Mexico, and it was like a town more than just a resort. And we were walking out to a Mexican restaurant, or as they call it down there, a restaurant. And we walked, and they had this beautiful tequila shop on the corner, just gorgeous. We walked in there, and everything was like $500 a bottle, right? But they were letting us taste. So we tried tasting some, and every tequila I tasted in that shop was better than any tequila I've ever had in America. And the best one of them, it was a Mexican tequila, can't remember the name of it, aged in bourbon barrels, was the best liquor or liqueur I've ever had in my life, and you cannot buy it in America. And it drove me crazy. It was like, talk about Adictivo. My God, I would have like sold guitars to buy that tequila, but you cannot get it in America. So as good as the tequila we have in America is, I think there's stuff in Mexico they just reserve for themselves.
Nice. I can also weigh in on the tequila discussion. As we're taping this, I just happened to be sitting in downtown Minneapolis in a cigar lounge that I'm a member of, and I actually have no business being a member, but I think the guys just like to have me in to talk sports. I mean, there's successful businessmen and CEOs and just a lot of different people here who are way over my grade of effectiveness. And but one of the big tequilas they like here is called Cava de Oro. And it's about a $120 bottle of tequila, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever tasted. It's got kind of like this peppery finish to it. It's so smooth, and I guess it is aged for 5 years in American and French oak red wine barrels. So it comes out with this unique flavor, and it's one of the best tequilas I've ever had. So we've got 2 tequila suggestions today on the show.
I'll also wrap this up by saying my wife and I went on a tour of the Jose Cuervo factory in I think it was in the Cabo area, and basically the guy spent the tour guide. He spent like the first 20 minutes of it saying, "You aren't the dumb Americans who drink the actual Jose Cuervo, are you?" I mean, basically, he was saying that the
Really?
Jose Cuervo they send north for college students to drink, no Mexican would ever have in their house. He said it's basically just rot gut. They know it's rot gut. They also know Americans will buy it. And then he took us over and had us try like their really good stuff, which tastes nothing like that. So that's one of the reasons tequila does not have a great reputation in America, is because Mexican companies know that young Americans will drink really bad tequila.
Wow, that's $1 billion industry.
Yes,
based
no
on
doubt
stuff based on stuff they would never drink.
Yes,
and the other thing about that is that they drink it. They drink any kind of tequila, and they drink it 2 ways. They throw it in margaritas that are frozen, and I mean it makes no sense. Or hey, let's do shots of tequila.
Yeah.
I do shots of tequila as well. I pour myself a shot and I sip on that for 30 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's the way to drink tequila, just like you would drink bourbon. And they are now exporting some really great Mexican tequilas to the United States, and you can get some. Adictivo is one of them, and I'm sure that the one that LaVelle was just mentioning is another one. But you can, if you're discerning, you can get some actual Mexican tequila now that's really, really good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
And
margaritas.
please don't just throw it down in a margarita or a shot
No.
all at once. Please keep buying tequila till you find some that you can sip on like bourbon after dinner. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say it's similar with drinking good scotch and good bourbon. Why would you bastardize it by mixing it with stuff?
Yeah.
It's just awful that way. And if you need ice, that's another issue too. If anything, you just put a couple of droplets of water in to open up the flavor a little bit. But someone wants like a Blanton's on the rocks. I'm like, Blanton's on the rocks? Are you nuts? You drink that thing without putting ice in it.
No.
Yeah,
No.
Same thing for tequila,
One more note, 2 more notes. First of all, one of the most popular drinks among Mexicans in Mexico is not the margarita, it's the paloma. It's basically grapefruit with tequila and ice and some sugar and everything else. It tastes fantastic. And the other thing I would say is when you are going to make a margarita or a paloma, you still don't want to use the really cheap stuff. You want to use something like a good Blanco, like what we drink is Cenote, Cenote. It's incredibly clean tasting. You could sip it and it blends perfectly, but it's not going to give you a headache the next day. So yeah, when it comes to tequila, you do want to make sure you don't have to spend the ridiculous amounts, but you got to spend a little bit so you're not getting the bad stuff.
correct.
All right. Well, I think we've done it. I think we've conquered this very important baseball conversation. We'll get back to some more baseball and Twins topics later this week. We'll also talk a little more music. For today, for Roy Smalley, LaVelle E. Neal III, I'm Jim Souhan. This is TalkNorth.com, and thanks for listening.